Story 1. The Shadow in the Sanctuary. Caleb, at the tender age of 6, was a quiet soul, raised in the devout embrace of a small Virginia town, where faith was as enduring as the rolling Appalachian hills. Easter Sunday was no mere holiday. It was a sacred ritual, a day when their modest clapboard church brimmed with hymns, hope, and the promise of resurrection. The sanctuary, with its polished oak pews and stained glass windows casting kaleidoscopic light, was Caleb's second home, its rhythms as familiar as his mother's lullabies. But on one fateful Easter, beneath the pastel streamers and the preacher's fervent words, a darkness waited, coiled in the shadows. The morning service stretched long, the air thick with incense and the weight of salvation. Caleb, dressed in a starched white shirt and a clip-on tie that pinched his neck, sat patiently in the pew, his love for the church woven into his young heart by his parents' unwavering devotion. After the final amen, the congregation spilled into the fellowship hall, voices buzzing with talk of egg hunts and potlucks. But for Caleb, the day wasn't over. Sunday school, or CCD as their parish called it, awaited in the basement, a routine as fixed as the sunrise. His parents led him downstairs, a warren of classrooms beneath the sanctuary, where the scent of old carpet and chalk dust mingled with the faint echo of hymns from above. The church's lower level was a split design built into a sloping hill. The main sanctuary sat upstairs, while the basement housed a long carpeted hallway lined with classrooms grouped by age. Caleb's room was first on the left, its walls plastered with crayon-drawn crosses and lambs. At the hallway's end stood two bathrooms, boys and girls, flanking a heavy gray door that led outside. That door, always locked from within, was an emergency exit, its use strictly forbidden to children, lest it snap shut and leave them stranded. On this Easter, the hallway was a riot of celebration. Pastel streamers draped the walls, paper cutouts of Jesus and bunnies fluttered between doors, and teachers donned cheap dollar store bunny ears. The kids, Caleb included, buzzed with anticipation for the egg hunt, their laughter filling the air as they colored scenes of the empty tomb. But the long service had left Caleb restless, and a pressing need stirred. He raised his hand, excused by his teacher, and slipped into the hallway. The festive decorations seemed to fade as the quiet enveloped him. The bathroom just 15 feet away, its fluorescent hum of familiar comfort. He entered, shutting the stall door, the silence broken only by the faint buzz of lights and a distant teacher's voice. Then, a sound, a slow metallic scrape, like a knife dragged across a door, sharp and deliberate. It came from the next stall, not the shuffle of a child, but something heavier, more intentional. Caleb froze, his curiosity outweighing fear. He finished quickly, assuming another kid was playing a prank, and moved to the sink, the mirror reflecting the empty room. As he washed his hands, the mirror caught a movement, the stall door creaking open. A figure emerged, not a child, but a man, clad in an Easter bunny costume that seemed to sag under an unnatural weight. The suit was wrong, grayish, stained, the fur matted as if it had never seen soap. One eye on the mask hung crooked, sewn back with careless stitches, and the ears drooped like wilted flowers. Caleb, young and trusting, felt no fear at first. In the church's sacred embrace, this was surely the Easter bunny, a surprise for the kids. He smiled, even chirped a shy, "Hi," but the figure didn't respond. It stood half in the stall, head tilted, staring through the costume's dark eye holes. The silence stretched, heavy and awkward, until the man stepped fully out, raising a gloved hand to point at the gray door. His voice, muffled and low, cut through the stillness. "You're the chosen child. I have a gift for you outside." Caleb's heart leapt with excitement. A special gift, just for him? The church's sanctity dulled his caution, and he pushed open the forbidden door, heedless of the rules. The man followed, silent, his floppy ears swaying as they crossed the pavement toward the parking lot's far corner. A car waited, half hidden by a rusted dumpster and scraggly bushes, its isolation striking Caleb as odd. No basket, no candy, just the car and the man's tightening grip on his hand. Then from the car's shadow, another figure emerged, also in a bunny costume, its presence shattering the magic. Two Easter bunnies? Caleb stopped, confusion clouding his excitement. The second figure's stillness felt predatory, and the air turned cold with wrongness. Before he could react, a scream tore through the lot. Miss Sabrina, a Sunday school teacher, rounding the church's corner. Her cry was primal, a sound of raw terror that pierced the morning. The man dropped Caleb's hand and bolted for the car, tires screeching as it sped away. Caleb ran to Miss Sabrina, collapsing into her arms, his glance back catching a fleeting horror. A child's face, pale and wide-eyed, pressed against the car's rear window. Miss Sabrina whisked him inside, the church erupting into chaos. Police swarmed, questions flew, but Caleb's memory of the backseat child was too brief, too uncertain. His parents, shattered, clung to him, his mother's sobs echoing through their home for days. The investigation hit a dead end. No missing children, no leads. The police theorized the man had a key, knew the church's layout, and waited in the bathroom, a predator cloaked in festive disguise. Caleb, now grown, carries the weight of that day. Easter brings not joy, but dread. The memory of those costumes and the child he might have seen, a ghost in the back seat, haunting him with questions of what might have been. The church, once a sanctuary, now feels like a place where shadows linger, waiting for the next chosen child. Story 2. The Hunt in the Hollow. Ethan, at 18, stood on the cusp of adulthood in a rural Ohio town, where Easter was less about church and more about rebellion. He and his friends Jake, Chuck, Arthur, and Raz had long outgrown egg hunts, replacing them with a game they called Manhunt, a high-stakes blend of hide-and-seek and strategy played in the sprawling woods behind Raz's house. Raz, short for Razzie, lived in a sprawling estate at the town's edge, its backyard bleeding into a dense forest that stretched into shadow. With his parents away until Good Friday, the house was theirs, a perfect stage for their nocturnal chaos. It was Thursday, the day before school closed for Easter, and the group planned a sleepover. Raz's basement, with its flickering fluorescence, worn couch, and lingering scent of pizza, was their war room. As midnight loomed, Chuck pitched a round of Manhunt, and the idea ignited them. They grabbed flashlights from the garage, used a phone app to split teams, Ethan, Chuck, and Raz as seekers, Jake and Arthur as hiders, and raided Raz's mom's stash of plastic eggs. The rules were simple. Seekers hid eggs, hiders sought them, and capturing all eggs or evading capture meant victory. The woods, bounded by a sagging fence, a winding creek, and a neighbor's horse pasture, were their arena, familiar yet vast under the moon's pale glow. The game began as the sun dipped below the horizon, twilight casting long, claw-like shadows. Ethan veered left, into a thicket where pines whispered secrets, their needles crunching underfoot. He kept his flashlight low, its beam skimming roots and rocks, relying on moonlight to cloak his movements. The thrill of the hunt pulsed through him, the woods alive with possibility. Every rustle a potential hider, every shadow a challenge. Then 20 feet ahead, a shadow shifted. Ethan froze, flashlight off, eyes straining against the dusk. A figure crouched behind a gnarled oak, motionless, unaware of him. He smirked, pegging it as Jake, who always hid boldly near the seekers, daring them to overlook him. Crouching low, Ethan circled, silent as a predator, heart pounding with the thrill of the catch. He lunged, tapping the figure's shoulder with a triumphant, "Gotcha!" But as the man turned, Ethan's world tilted. It wasn't Jake. A stranger, gaunt and wild-eyed, stared back, his slicked-back hair gleaming under the moonlight, clothes tattered and reeking of sweat and decay. His eyes, wide and unblinking, screamed danger, like a cornered animal ready to strike. Before Ethan could retreat, the man tackled him, slamming him into the dirt with a force that knocked the breath from his lungs. Hands clamped Ethan's throat, squeezing with terrifying strength. Stars burst in his vision, his breath a fading gasp, the weight of death pressing down. He clawed at the man's arms, panic drowning thought, certain this was the end. Then, a flashlight's beam sliced through the trees, erratic and bright. The man froze, eyes darting, and released Ethan, vanishing into the woods like a specter. Ethan lay gasping, the world spinning, until Chuck reached him, pulling him up with a shout. Chuck had seen it all, his cry likely saving Ethan's life. They ran, adrenaline burning, calling the others back to the house. In the basement, Ethan recounted the attack, his voice shaking, the man's eyes seared into his memory. But Arthur's words silenced them. Before the game started, during the 10-minute prep, he'd seen two figures moving through the trees, slow and deliberate, like scouts. Not seekers, not hiders, strangers. The realization hit like a gunshot. At least 3 unknown men had been in the woods. One who'd nearly killed Ethan, 2 others lurking before the game began. Fear choked the room, the basement's dim light casting their faces in stark relief. Ethan urged calling the police, his throat still raw. But Raz, pale and resolute, refused. Grounded and forbidden from hosting, he feared his parents' wrath more than the threat outside. The others wavered, torn between loyalty and dread, and Ethan, exhausted and outnumbered, relented. Sleep eluded him, the man's eyes haunting his dreams, a specter of violence waiting in the dark. He left at dawn, slipping out before the others woke, the incident a scar he tried to bury. A week later, Raz admitted he'd retrieved the eggs, braving the woods alone. The group laughed, but Ethan's thoughts darkened. Who were those men, and what did they want? The woods, once a playground, now loomed as a place of unseen threats, their shadows stretching long and menacing. Ethan vowed never to return, Easter forever tainted by the hunt that nearly claimed him. Now in college, far from Raz's backyard, the memory resurfaces each spring, a reminder that some games end in survival, not victory. Story 3, The Watchers in the Woods. Lila, a city-bred 17-year-old, dreaded the annual Easter pilgrimage to her Uncle John's estate in rural Tennessee. The house, a grand, weathered relic surrounded by endless woods, was a haven for her outdoorsy relatives, hunters, fishers, and farmers who thrived in the wild. Lila, an only child more at home with books and city lights, felt like an alien among them, their tales of deer tracks and river bends as foreign as another language. Her cousin Kevin, a lanky 19-year-old with a quiet charm, was her only ally, their bond forged by shared outsider status. This Easter, as her parents' car wound through the misty hills, Lila braced for another weekend of awkward isolation. They arrived late Friday, the house already humming with relatives, boisterous aunts, grizzled uncles, and cousins with babies on their hips. Exhausted from the drive, Lila crashed, waking to find Kevin in the basement, where a battered pool table offered refuge from the chaos upstairs. They played, trading stories of family quirks, the clack of balls a steady rhythm against the distant hum of laughter. Kevin spoke of the woods, his voice alight with reverence for their untamed beauty, describing hidden clearings and streams that felt like secrets only he knew. Lila, bored and restless, let him talk, his passion a welcome distraction from the holiday's weight. By afternoon, he'd convinced her for a walk, a rare concession for a girl who loathed nature's unpredictability. They told Uncle John, who waved them off with his usual warmth, and stepped into the backyard, the woods swallowing them like a living thing. Kevin led, navigating a faint path through dense trees, his confidence easing Lila's nerves. The air was cool, the forest alive with birdsong and the rustle of leaves, but as they ventured deeper, Lila's unease grew, the path narrowing into a tangle of roots and shadows. 20 minutes in, she questioned their route, but Kevin laughed, claiming he knew the woods like his own skin. Another 20 minutes passed, the trees closing in, when a sound stopped them cold. A heavy thunk, like a mallet striking wood, rhythmic and deliberate, echoing from ahead. Lila's heart raced, her city instincts screaming danger. Kevin's eyes narrowed, scanning the trees, his usual calm fraying. The sound wasn't animal, it was human, purposeful, a steady beat that felt like a warning. He murmured about hunters, but his tense posture betrayed doubt. The noise ceased, leaving a suffocating silence, the forest holding its breath. Lila suggested turning back, but Kevin's curiosity mirrored her own, a reckless spark urging them forward. They pressed on, senses sharp, the woods now a maze of potential threats. Minutes later, Kevin halted, arm barring her path. He pointed upward, and Lila's breath caught. 3 upside-down crosses, crudely nailed, hung high in the trees, 15 feet up, unreachable without tools. Their presence felt profane, a deliberate desecration that chilled her to the core. Before they could retreat, movement flickered in the undergrowth. A man emerged, bearded and clad in flannel, his dark eyes locking onto Lila with a predator's focus. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and menacing, each word a threat. Kevin stepped forward, shielding her, apologizing as they backed away. The man didn't move, his stare a weight that followed them, heavy and unrelenting. They retraced their steps, silent, checking for pursuit. The forest's beauty now a mask for dread. Back at the house, they told Uncle John, whose face darkened. No neighbor matched the man's description, and the crosses were a mystery, their purpose unknown. He dismissed arming up, wary of escalating, and the family returned to Easter plans, unease simmering beneath the surface. Lila couldn't shake the encounter, the man's eyes boring into her dreams. That night, sleep evaded her, and by 5 a.m., she wandered to Uncle John's third-floor study, its window overlooking the woods. A faint glow pulsed at the tree line, not a flashlight, but fire, flickering like a heartbeat. Heart pounding, she crept to the back deck, stifling a scream. 3 figures stood just beyond the woods, each holding a torch, their faces shrouded in shadow. Motionless, they faced the house, their intent a chilling void that seemed to single her out. She woke Uncle John, who grabbed his rifle and stormed outside, Lila trailing behind. The figures vanished, swallowed by the trees as if they'd never been. He fired 3 shots skyward, the cracks shattering the dawn, the house erupting in chaos. Easter's joy was lost, replaced by a tension that clung to every conversation. The day passed in a haze of strained smiles and guarded glances. When Lila's family left, relief mingled with dread, the memory of those torches burning in her mind. Months later, Uncle John reported no further incidents, but Lila's dreams remain haunted by firelight and crosses, the Watcher's purpose a shadow she can't escape. The woods, once merely foreign, now feel like a realm where something ancient and malevolent waits, its gaze fixed on her.